Hi, this is Gary Block, and welcome back to, well, you see it, your Little Falls scene. A little bit of a history. We're doing rebroadcast of programs we did for a number of years. Back a number of years ago, about 2007, there were 4 guys here in Little Falls who got together at the local bakery, and they discussed Little Falls. And the thought was, let's get these guys together. Gary Block will moderate it. And we sat down in the studio and we had some fun talking about Little Falls because these guys were a big part of the history of Little Falls. We had 4 gentlemen. We had Hub Zyvoloski, Bodie Larson, and 2 brothers, Les and Russ Sod. And it was such a joy doing this program with them. We can't let this program just go away. It's a bit of history about Little Falls, and we had so many people who filled in over the years. We talked about Hennepin Paper. We talked about where I was at for many years, the local radio station. We talked about just baseball, anything that pertained to Little Falls, we talked about it. We had fun with it. And we're rebroadcasting some of those old programs. And thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoy them here on Great River TV. I'm Gary Block, and this is the Little Falls scene. We're back together again. Bud Zyvoloski, Lester Sod, and Hub Zyvoloski, and gentlemen, we're back together.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
And we have so much to talk about. The last time we had a chance to get together, we were talking about the musical families here in Little Falls. And Bud, we forgot a couple of them. We forgot the Guast, for example.
Yeah. That was the main one, what I thought about, because the Guast family were very, very talented. There was Wally Guast, who I played for, and he ran the Night Owls for many years. And he had a brother called Dave Guast. He ran Dave Serenaders. And 2 others in the family were Eddie. He was a schoolmate of mine. He played drums. And their sister Esther was a piano player. And then Kevin had taken over the Night Owl band. And we had Richard and Jerry Guast, and their brother-in-law was Lloyd Bozer, and he's passed away now. But that made one big, talented family. And I was sorry we didn't, when we were talking about it last time, that we didn't mention it. And I know Doris and Marty, her son Marty, still live here, and they watch our show.
Great.
And Lloyd's widow, Faye, she lives here yet too. So, and I just wanted to say that they were a very, very talented family.
Floyd played
It was
piano.
mostly band music and dance music, and different.
Floyd
bands,
played
so.
piano.
Lloyd
Lloyd,
played piano.
Lloyd
Yes.
did.
Lloyd, yeah.
Right.
And they were all on different instruments too. So.
Well, the last time we were together, we talked a lot about Hub and Bud's father's store. We have a calendar from, it says compliments of Mike Zyvoloski, staple and fancy groceries. I love the phone number. Apparently there were 2 phone numbers.
One at home, I think, and one at the house.
376W or 376R.
Wow.
And 1931 is the year. Gentlemen, what's the story on this calendar?
Well, back then, we had a slot machine in the grocery store. And every time the guy that owned the slot machine would come over to take the money out, us kids would each get a nickel if we were around. And a year or 2 went by, and all of a sudden the slot machine was gone. And there used to be a gang called the Cream Can Gang. They would rob safes, they'd drill with different drills, and they would cool their tools in the cream can and leave the cream can sit. Well, the guy that owned the slot machines happened to be the leader of that. So after they were put away, that was the end of our nickels.
Guys, do you remember slot machines in other places in Little Falls?
I remember there were 2 in the Buckman Hotel, and that was a place where you could have your photograph taken. There'd be a traveling man, and my 2 sisters were there and had their picture taken, and there was a guy playing the slot machine, and I was about 5, 6 years old, and I went over there, and he was just losing. He wasn't too happy, and I said, "You're not playing it right." And he looked at this little kid, and he said, "Well, how do you play it right?" And I said, "You got to tap machine gently on the back of the machine. Okay, so tap it. So I tapped it, and geez, he hit a whole bunch, and he said, "I'll split it with you." And I went home with a roll of nickels about that size. My dad said, "Where did you get that?" And I was gambling, Daddy.
Les, do you remember slot machines anywhere?
Down by Al's Friendly Tavern south of town, these guys knew where that was. There was
next
a
door.
little eating place, and they called it McLeod's. And we'd go down there and buy chow mein from them and take it home. And they had a slot machine, and my mother would give us a nickel so we could put in the slot machine. We never won anything, but it was fun anyway.
I thought all he sold out there was chicken. We'd always go after a dance or something.
I don't know, but I remember putting a nickel in that machine. But otherwise, I don't remember any other place having them.
No, but I have a calendar here from the Silver Treat, and I think most people out there remember the Silver Treat when it was run by Len Ginter and his family, and his father, Martin, had the grocery store on the other side. Well, after the slot machines were all taken out, he had a little back room behind his grocery store, and us kids would sneak in. Whenever we had a nickel to play, we would try to make something out of the slot machines, but nobody ever won. And I think after Martin died, then Leonard took it home.
Yeah. But Martin liked to play it too.
Yes.
He would get the nickels out of the cash register and walk back. He never said anything. He was always very quiet, not like Len. Len was very outgoing, but his dad was very quiet man.
Well, after these nickel machines that you pull the handle down, at the homestead.
One-armed bandits.
I remember that.
One-armed bandits, that's what they called it.
But we used to play out at the homestead, and they had an electric machine. That was the first one I seen, but shortly after they had put this in, then everybody had to go when Governor Youngdahl came in. Slot machines and liquor got lost in all of these places.
And that was about what year?
Well, up to 48.
Okay.
Yeah. I had 2 of those slot machines, and I sold both of them. Can I tell you who I sold them to?
Would you go ahead?
I sold one to Barney Chuck and the other one to Pat Burns.
Okay.
And I think Pat still has that one down there.
Yeah. He didn't take it with him, did he?
No, I don't think.
Sorry, Pat.
Who here remembered them being destroyed, the slot machines?
I didn't.
They what?
You remember the slot machines being destroyed?
Oh, yeah. We lived the second house from the jail. And I think Bud said it was Youngdahl that got rid of them.
Youngdahl.
Yeah, Governor Youngdahl.
Yeah, he even stopped the people playing bingo. And I remember Bill Butcher was the sheriff, and him and his deputy, Pat Smith, and they had big sledgehammers, and they were smashing them up, and then Bill Butcher told us kids, you can have those nickels. So we were picking nickels up all over.
Oh.
But yeah, they smashed them all up.
The rumor I heard was that they just tossed them in the river.
Well, that could have been too.
In fact, I thought I saw it in a newsreel or something at the theater where they were just throwing them into the river. But maybe they smashed them before they threw them in the river.
Well, it could have been, but I remember they were cast metal. What were they? I don't know what kind of white metal or something, and they smashed
they
them
were
all.
cast.
Smashed them all up. Yeah.
Before
the attitude in those days was the river was a garbage pit.
Yeah.
You could throw everything in the river.
Yeah, it's a good thing Youngdahl can't see the casinos now.
Yeah.
Going around the state where the armories are, when I worked at Camp Ripley, I was one of the inspectors, and I'd go to a town that I'd never been to before, and I said, "Where's the river?" Because every town was built by a river. They had to have some place to flush the toilet. That was
Right.
That was really bad. It's surprising that the river has recovered as much as it has, or all the rivers.
Speaking of the river, let's talk about ice skating on the Mississippi River here in town.
Oh, boy.
Who's got great stories? All 3 of you do this?
Hub and I have, I know that.
Yeah.
Well, the one I have is when conditions were right, and it was probably every 3 years, if the river froze over before you got snow, then we would skate and needed a north wind, but that was accommodating most of the time in November and December. We'd skate all the way to Darling, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then we would open our jackets and let that wind. We had to go 40 miles an hour on those things. Oh, was that fun. But it only happened if you got the river froze over before you got snow.
So there wasn't snow on it. The north wind would take you all the way back to Little Falls
Oh,
again.
Right.
In a hurry.
Yeah.
So did a lot of people do this?
Well, everybody was a good skater.
Yeah.
There wasn't much else to do. People didn't have any money to go, did a lot of other things. So we had we lived right across from the ice skating rink the snowplows are there now, but used to be it was a girls softball, the West Side Cowboys baseball team.
Actually,
and
the
they
Red Sox
flooded
played there too, Bud.
Pardon?
The Red Sox played there too.
Yeah,
They
and
really
we had
did.
lights and a warming house. And everybody, grown-ups, little, everybody go out and skate. And we skated to music for a while. I think
Oh, yeah.
somebody donated a record machine.
Well, they had one record machine, and we had 3 skating rinks: North End, South End,
Yeah.
and West Side. And we'd get it for a week, and then the North End would get it for a week. And Adeline Zorn played that one miserable song on there till we had. It was some old cowboy song.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She kept playing that thing, drive you crazy.
Well, Les, you had a different way of skating on the Mississippi. Tell
Yes.
us about that.
Yeah, well, years ago, my dad had a skate sale when he was down on Lake Pepin, and they had them things you ride in too, the sail things.
Yep.
But after a while, I made one that was about 6 foot high and about maybe 8 foot long, and you could hang on to that, and you could catch the wind like a sailboat and go across the river. So I was up on the bay there one time, and this veterinarian, Doc Peterson, was there, and there was this medical doctor, Dr. Bolstead, and he said, "Let me try that thing." And I thought, well, yeah, okay. But I said, now when you get going and you get too fast, just throw it down, and then you can glide and stop. So I gave it to him, and he took off, and he headed across, and he didn't throw it down, and he crashed right into the bank on the west side.
That was Dr. Bolstead.
Yeah, Doc Peterson and I, we thought, oh man, did this guy get killed or what, So we skated over there, and then he brushed the snow off, and he got up. But that's the last time I ever let anybody use that thing.
So you were the only one out there in the river with this?
Yeah.
You should have patented it.
Yeah.
Well,
Look what happened
in
after
fact,
that.
what happened is my dad was there one time, and he fell and dislocated his shoulder. Yeah. And so he had to go to the hospital to get that thing fixed.
And that was the end of
That was the end of
Ice
him
sailing?
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus probably would have sued you.
No.
One other story, where the Bethel Lutheran Church is now,
okay.
that was all swamp in there, and it was all the hazelnut bushes in there. And of course, that was real shallow, so that always froze over before the snow came. So we would play hide and go seek in there. Everybody get their skates on, and oh man, there was 6, 8, 10 blocks, and they would go all the way to the Pine Grove Park. That was the end of it. But you could just get lost in there for hours. It was so much fun. And of course, you had to dodge all those trees around there. So everybody had their little trails, but that was fun. But like Bud said, you had to find entertainment. You didn't have television, and the radio didn't work at night, so
And no
we did
money,
all
Bud.
kinds of
No
innovative-
money, and
No
we were,
money.
and we were all good skaters.
You mentioned hazelnuts.
Yeah, hazelnuts.
You
Yeah,
went hazelnut picking.
yeah. Well, that was a seasonal thing too. It was probably middle of August, somewhere in there. That whole area was all hazelnut. Everything, adults, kids, everybody was in there picking them, and then you'd pick them green, and there's no way you could get the hazelnut out of that green pod. So everybody's roof had all these hazelnuts drying in the sun.
Yeah.
And long about the time school started, they were dry enough so you could take them out of the thing, and they were ready to eat. And every guy had a pair of pliers in their back pocket because that shell was just as hard as all get out. And everybody was cracking those things. And there were so many seasonal things that we did. Like a week before the fair would come, then we'd go out and try to find as much iron and try to make a few pennies to go to the fair, because what was the word when your parents give you an allowance?
Oh, yeah.
That word wasn't even in the dictionary.
No, that was.
Allowance. I'll give you an allowance.
And choke cherries,
Oh, that was another one. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
that
When everybody walked around like this, you know it was chokecherry season. Oh, you'd really pucker up with those things.
Right next to where you lived there was a gigantic chokecherry tree in the backyard. Pancrans lived there.
Okay.
And we would be up in that tree, and Frank Ike would come home and he'd say, "You kids get out of that tree there. You're going to get sick eating all those things." And of course, it'd make your teeth all
Oh,
black.
God. Oh, yeah.
And that was in our backyard?
No,
where
it
I
was
live now.
next door.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I don't know what happened. They must have cut it down. But that was the biggest chokecherry tree I ever saw. It must have been like 30 feet high. Yeah.
In the summertime, you guys had a chance to go to a lot of band concerts, right? Tell me about the Little Falls City Band.
Well, the band concert was down there by the Memorial Park.
Okay.
With the
Right there by the
monuments
post
are.
office.
Yeah.
And I think it was once a week on a Thursday night. And Bill Blake was the bandmaster, and it was called the City Band, and they'd put on a program for everybody, and everybody would just come and listen because it was things to do and it was free. And we used to look down in the river, and I don't know if you remember the Falls Flyer boats made by Larson.
Sure, the wooden ones.
There was always a couple of them would just be circling around the river listening, and we were all so envious. Usually it was pretty nice nights, and we'd sit and watch them circle around. And there was a guy by the name of Benny Borgen. Do you remember Ben?
Vaguely,
He had
yeah.
the red.
Yeah.
He had the little red popcorn wagon.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And he'd always come over and park it right on the road, and popcorn for a nickel you could buy almost anything that he had there. And it was kind of a night out for everybody, a family night. It was something for everybody. Then we really enjoyed that.
So how do you make a living with a popcorn wagon?
Huh?
How do you make a
I
living with a
don't know.
popcorn wagon?
Oh,
We
man,
were
he
talking
was
about that,
making
wondering if
money.
he had another
He
job.
made a living at it.
Yeah.
He was usually down there by Jardines. In the, on
His
the-
wife's name was Tina.
I think he had other things in there, and I think at times he might have had like hot dogs or different things. and
There
candy
wasn't the
bars.
variety then that you have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Because
do you
there
mean a
weren't any
hamburger? What do
other.
you think I'm running a
there
shop
weren't-
here?
yeah.
Go to the black and white.
Yeah.
So who was in the city band?
They actually got paid. They were paid by the city.
Yes.
All the musicians, Ken Pinkney was one of them. And
Yeah. And then he later on he was a bandmaster after Bill
Yeah.
Blake retired.
Yeah,
And,
well, there were a lot of older people. you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was older ones.
There never was a Zyvoloski or a Sod that
Well-
played in the city band?
When Ken Pinkney, I think Ken Pinkney took over, then our family, you'd always have some live entertainment. They had a microphone there, and we sang there.
Yeah. I
quite
can
few
tell you a
times.
little story about that. Hub and I were going to sing at the band concert in between intermission. And I was standing on the stage like this, and I dropped something down, and I had the electric guitar in my hand, and I stepped down in that wet.
You did what?
Stepped into the
I
water.
stepped into the water.
electric
And I had my hands on the string, and I'll tell you, I never had a shock like that in my whole life. But I
You haven't
learned
been
better.
the same since, have you?
No. Yeah, I think it made me smarter.
Oh, did it?
Well, that's
they,
one
they had
experience
they
I
had
remember
folding
about
chairs or benches or
Oh,
something
yes.
for people to sit, but
Oh,
a lot
yes,
of people
it was
sat
a-
in their cars. And when the song was over, they would honk their horn.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
it was a
remember
night
the
out for
honking,
people.
yeah.
And not many things were free, and this was a nice concert for a family.
But then they said the semis were making too much noise, so then they moved it up to the Washington playground.
Yeah.
Well, they needed an excuse to get it out of there
Yeah.
for some reason,
Yeah,
because
they wanted out.
it had been there long enough, and times were changing.
Yeah.
And then they moved it up to the water tower by the city hall, or where City Hall is now. And after the third time they moved it, it
Fell apart.
Yeah.
And that was the end of the band
That was
concert.
it.
Yeah.
It never was rebuilt again.
No.
Well, Art and Jan Warner were trying to salvage that in the worst way, and the building just
It just fell
finally
apart.
just fell apart.
Yeah.
It was in the park across the street from me, the Washington
Yes,
Playground.
right
for a
Oh,
where,
yeah,
where
yeah.
you lived
Yeah,
there.
your hometown.
Now, Royalton also did a band concert?
Well, there was a doctor by the name of Dr. McGonigal.
McGonigal,
You'll remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And Hub and I used to go, and it was like a little talent contest. And you get a prize, first prize or second prize. And it was so kind of odd because when I got married, my mother and Dolores' mother were talking together. And Dolores' mother said, well, you know, our family, they were pretty good singers and things like that. But my daughter Dolores used to go to Royalton. She'd do an acrobatic act, and she'd always end up in second place. And she'd come home and tell her mom, "Them two little cowboys beat me out every time." And they found it out it was Hub and I.
What was funny about it was there's the gas station right in that general area. The thing was set up across the street between Highway 10 and the railroad tracks. And the railroad tracks weren't from here to that wall away.
Yeah.
And when the trains would go, everything would stop and everybody would go like, as soon as the train went, you'd go right back to entertaining.
They drew a big crowd down there, though.
They did.
Yeah.
Very well.
My dad used to take us down there, and boy, they had a big, big crowd.
He always had extra entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And people like that, as I say, you know, there wasn't much to do. No money.
No
involved,
money.
And everybody, you could drive. There was only 10 miles from here.
Yeah.
And take the
Gas
kids
price
out
was
for a
probably
ride.
10 cents a gallon.
Yeah. That was really quite something. That Dr. McGonigal was. In fact, two of his boys played. Was that his?
I don't know. I don't think they were his.
Well, they
dad.
were
I
his
think,
nephews, and they played ball
Kenny,
for us.
Kenny McGonigal.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, they live at Lake Elliott.
Yeah,
I just
still-
talked to them about a
Yeah,
month
they
ago.
played ball for the Red Sox.
yeah, we played in. Kenny played with us in '49.
Yes.
Yeah. And his brother, but I can't. His brother died, but I can't remember his first name.
Kenny.
He was a sub.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he could play any position.
Right.
But who are the Kiesel brothers?
Well, I think it was one of the organizations in town would sponsor an amateur show. And Hub and I would always be on it. I had a list, and I lost it, of going way back. Somebody had handed it to me, and I misplaced that thing. But Hub and I were on it. My sister Mary was on it. And we'd always end up second or third place. It was voted by the people in the audience would vote, plus a couple of judges. And first place always went to the Kiesel brothers.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
They were like the Statler brothers. They were very, very good. And they always won first place. And so when they quit, Hub and I went back into the amateur contest, and we won first place. And after
We
that,
had
we
half the
quit.
West Side out there voting for us.
Yeah.
But arrange that.
Yep.
You learn that when you
After
fell on his
that, then
head.
we didn't go anymore after we won first place. But these four boys, they could have been on television as good as Statler Brothers. And I don't know if any of the family is ever around here. I haven't heard that name
No,
for
no.
years and years and years. They were called the Kiesel Brothers.
One of the buildings that's still standing in downtown Little Falls is the Buckman Building. It wasn't always called the Buckman Building, was it? Buckman Hotel? And
Yes, it
Buckman
was the
Hotel,
Buckman
yeah.
Hotel
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
Buckman Bar.
Yeah.
We called it Buckingham Palace.
You did, huh? Nice place?
Huh?
Nice place?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was, at one point, it was the best eating place in town. They had a restaurant and a bar and the hotel. And I know at one point, a guy by the name of Charlie Rooney, he owned Charlie's Bar in Royalton, and he played piano, and I played guitar with him. And we entertained in the lounge quite a bit. And the bartender was Bill Blake again. When I used to be the bandmaster. And it was one of the nicest eating places in town. And Charlie had it reminded me that Charlie had a son called Dave Rooney. And he had a trio up in the city area, and he was very, very popular, and one of the best trios around in the whole state. But getting back to the Buckman Building, it was managed by Slats Randall. Somebody had told me this, don't you forget to mention Slats. He run that, and he was a celebrity too. He wrote a song called Skirts, and that the tune was #1 through the whole nation for I don't know how many years. In fact, when I played in the band, we still did it. I know Erhard Schmidt did a real good job on that.
Yeah.
And another one used to sing it was, what's his name?
Arthur Godfrey?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Arthur Godfrey used to do that.
Oh yeah, that was one of
And,
his songs that he'd play his little mandolin
So
or whatever.
we had a
And-
celebrity in town that wrote
So
music.
you remember
and-
skirts?
Huh?
You remember skirts?
Oh, yes.
sure.
Mhm.
It was very, very
Oh,
popular.
yeah, very
For-
popular.
So what did it sound like?
Skirts, I love those skirts. You're a big attraction to me. That's the first words of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a nice, fast
Yeah,
tempo
it was a good
song.
good dance
Yeah.
song.
There was
It
a
was-
song that had good harmony
It
to
was
it.
in every band's repertoire.
Yeah.
So was Slats Randall from Little Falls? Or just
Yeah, no, he
ended
was
up in
here.
Little Falls?
Yeah.
He was a local.
I think he
Yeah,
was.
he was one
Yeah,
of
I
the
think he
Randall
was.
family. And but where he
was
disappeared to,
very-
I don't know. He probably passed away, and
Oh,
none of
yeah.
us knew about it.
Yeah.
He was pretty old when we were growing up, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I never, until you brought that up, I didn't know that he had any talent other than being a bartender. 'Cause
Well,
he wasn't Mr. Sociable. You know, he
yeah.
was
Well, I
just
didn't know him very well, but
No,
I
I
know
mean,
we
he's kinda
we
laid back.
entertained there for a while, and we got paid, and that was about it. You know.
I mean, there were customers, and then there were customers that were his friends, and he had this little
Yeah.
group of people, and he'd cater to them, and the other one, what do you want? So I just figured he was a grumpy old man.
Oh yeah,
So the bar at the Buckman Hotel was a nice bar?
very nice.
It was.
Yeah, it was more of a lounge
Yeah.
bar.
Okay.
People
And
would sit at the bar, but then you could go into that lobby, a kind of a lobby area,
Yeah.
lounge. Yeah,
It was a
That's
that's where that
Greyhound,
slot machine was that I.
Greyhound bus depot.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
That
they
was
had
also the-
they had a big baby grand piano, and so that took up quite a bit of room, and it was really nice. And the
So they had
first year I had worked at Like New Cleaners, we had our Christmas party there, and it was very, very delightful. I mean, it was just really a nice place to eat.
But that was that was a formal dining room.
Yes, very.
Remember when you and I entertained there?
I know.
I
You
think we
told that last
We
time.
told that
yeah.
story, yeah.
So what
Yeah.
happened?
Well, we don't know who
I've had
they
three
were.
forks. He didn't know how to use them.
Yeah, the folks, we were the entertainment, and Pa, my dad got that job for us, and we talked about that. We had to
Yeah,
sneak the
we-
guitar
yeah.
across the river and
Yeah.
not get killed, and when we got there, two nice little boys, and I have no idea who these people were, all well dressed and everything. Oh, come and eat with us. So we sat down and ate with them, and then
That's
looked
the
at-
only pay we
Gee, there
got.
were like 9 forks there, and they kept bringing food. And Jesus, at our house, if you had
did one fork.
corn on the cob,
Yeah.
that was the meal. Yeah, what am I doing all? So that was quite an. I can that whole place stands out in my mind to this day.
Yeah,
And I couldn't have been more than 10, 11 years old
yeah.
at that
We were
time.
about in there, very, very young.
Yeah.
You know, I personally have always had an interest in the Buckman building. The house that we live in right now was the one that Clarence Buckman built.
Yes.
Lived there with his second wife.
Oh.
And of course, Clarence would have built the Buckman Hotel. It burned down, and then they rebuilt it. So anytime I have a chance to buy anything that came from the Buckman Hotel, and we have our Buckman shrine in our kitchen. It's a display case that's built into the wall. It has items from the Buckman building, including postcards. We've picked up items that were inside the hotel that are marked that they must have gave away. And so it's interesting for me to hear the stories.
Yeah.
And I know Les has told the story before about the dental pliers that were in the bar. And I love that story, so you got to share it again.
Well, when I lived on First Street Southeast, right across the alley was John Faust, and he was a ham distributor for beer. And for some reason, we were down at the Buckman Hotel in the bar, and a guy came in, and Doc Mauer was in there. He was a dentist. He was above Bonjo's, where it is now. And that guy says, "Oh, Doc," he says, "I got such a toothache." He said, and he told the bartender, "Give me that pliers there." Off the cash register was one, and it was bent like this. And so the bartender gave it to Doc, and Doc says to the guy, "Which tooth is it?" He said, and he looked in there, and he went in there and pulled the guy's tooth right out, right in the bar.
No, this couldn't have been the most well-lit place in the world either.
Well,
This is a
it
bar.
couldn't have been too sanitary.
This would have been like Doc Mauer because he was allergic to Novocaine. When you went to him, you got it straight.
Okay.
So for him to pull a tooth without Novocaine, that was his normal operation.
Oh, yeah, that was,
Maybe
I
the
always,
lighting wasn't quite as good.
I always remember that, gee whiz, that was.
That was quite a story.
Yeah.
From what I understand, in talking to you guys, another big event in town was the D.F.I. dance. What was that about?
Well, every year the Daughters of Isabella was a women's organization, and they would, I don't know if it was a moneymaker or not, but they would put on a big formal dance. And a lot of them wore formals and came with corsages like you would do at a prom. And I know, the wife and I think we took my mother and dad. And, we went and had a good time. We all danced. And when the night was over, we took Mom and Dad home and walked in a house with him for a while. And he said, boy, he says, you know, Mom and I really danced. He says, everybody was looking at our feet, how I was dancing. And he was a good dancer. But I looked down at his shoes. He had a brown shoe and a black shoe on. And he was so outstanding. Then he quit bragging about it then.
But he was quite a sight on the dance floor. I
Yes,
mean, he had
he
a big
was.
beer belly on him.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
boy, he was light on his feet for about 10 minutes. Then, call 911. But he was fun to watch dance.
Yeah, but it was quite a
And my
social
mother was a
event.
real good dancer.
That was a big social event.
Oh, yeah.
And
Very big.
everybody went. It was usually at the high school where you could have a lot of room.
Okay.
It was filled.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, their dates, they'd bring corsages, and you don't see that anymore. But and those kind of things were kind of flowery
Yeah.
for people.
So if it was at the high school, there wasn't any alcohol.
No,
No.
there was punch.
Okay.
And then everybody went out somewhere after. It wasn't one of those all-night affairs. It was probably like 8 to 12 or
Yeah, maybe one.
or 7-11.
But then all the restaurants or the nightclubs that we talked about, they
They were
all
all
served
open, yeah.
meals,
So,
and that's where people would go out and eat. And then you could have a drink.
Yeah, it was
But
really
setups, is that what most of them?
well. Yeah, at that point, I think they served.
They could
liquor,
serve
that
drinks,
was
yeah.
back in those 40s
Yeah.
and late 30s. It was really neat.
There had to be always something exciting happening at the Zyvoloski home. Les, I just wonder about this place when I hear the stories.
It was a wild place.
Yeah.
You were telling me the story about the time you had to babysit for a horse?
Oh, well, really it was Bud, yeah. No, yeah, I wanted to talk about Paul Mitchell. It was Paul Mitchell's horse.
Well, I think that's the reason he brought it up. But
Yeah.
Paul Mitchell lived down on, just past the paper mill down on Limburg Drive, and he asked us to babysit their horse over a weekend. It was a big pony.
Yeah.
Well, a small horse or a big pony. And we thought we were going to really be smart, take care of him. And he darn near tore my hand off. We had him on a chain, and all of a sudden he decided to, and I grabbed the chain to try to stop him. And he ran away, and we did get him. He took us around.
I was younger, and I'd sat up with the horse all night because I was afraid he was going to get away, and I thought we were going to get to ride him in the morning. I'd never been on a horse.
So you sat outside with him?
Well, I was kind of in and out.
Okay.
But I was pretty much in the porch watching him. And when he took off, and I thought Bud had gotten on him, but
I did.
Now I remember he was dragging you down the road, and he went about, we were on 50, he went almost to Broadway.
Yeah.
And I'm running, and one of the guys on 4th Street, everybody had animals, and we'll talk about that later, but Bud's chasing this thing down there, and I'm behind, and the guy said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Oh, the horse got away, and we're babysitting the horse." He said, "Don't worry, when he gets hungry, he'll stop and eat." And that's exactly what he did.
What he did. And then I tried to ride him.
Oh, boy, he was impossible.
Yeah. But the reason Hub mentioned that because he was talking about Paul Mitchell, the one that owned the horse, about doing something with the Disney people.
Well,
or-
I always heard the rumor that he worked for Walt Disney, and he lived end of 3rd Street, and you'd cross over Lindbergh Drive, and he lived straight ahead. It was a small house, and I don't know if he had 3, 4 children, but in his garage, and he always had that garage door open, he had almost life-size pictures of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and he didn't mind us going in there looking at them, and they were absolutely beautiful. And to this day, I don't know if he actually worked for them. He ended up in our nursing home. He had Alzheimer's, and I couldn't get any information out of him. And I know he has at least one member of his family living in town, or was, but I can't remember her name. I think she lives up on 9th Street or someplace on Northeast.
Yeah, she does.
Anyway, I thought, I was telling somebody about that, and I said, I'll get proof for it. So I drove down there. Well, they either built a house around it or they took that house down, and everything's different, and I got bashful and I didn't stop in. So I thought I'll use this forum here and see if somebody can locate it. If they tore that down and the Seven Dwarfs went with it, I'm wondering if the kids may have taken a picture of it.
So it was inside the garage?
It was inside the
painting?
garage on the west wall. Yeah, you could walk in, and there it was all the way across that garage. And it was absolutely gorgeous.
So if somebody has some information, get a hold of Hub.
Yeah, geez, I'd love to hear from him.
Yeah.
And I think his daughter still lives here, but I can't remember. She was about 4 years behind me in school, the last I remember, she lived someplace up around 9th Street Northeast. But I would love to find out if number one, if that garage still exists, and if it doesn't, did the kids have a picture of it?
Oh, yeah.
You'd love to see it.
Oh, I would, yeah. Love to have a copy of it.
I'll find out her name. I got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
It wasn't uncommon to have livestock here in town. I remember that as a youngster. We had Bessie. What was her last name?
Bednark.
Okay. She lived a block away from us in 6th Street Southeast, and I remember the cow.
Yeah.
But there was about a half a block of pasture, and she had a cow there, and we always remembered Bessie's cow as a kid. I mean, that wasn't uncommon here in town.
Yeah. She'd put the milk pail on the handlebar, and she'd walk all the way down to the creamery down there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Where else?
The thing was, there were a lot of vacant lots, and sometimes a vacant lot was a half a block or a whole block. Actually, the other half of our block between 3rd and 4th Street, and the Flowlers lived on 4th, there weren't any houses on there.
that
And
was
was our
all bare.
playground. But people would get permission from whoever owned it, and you'd see them in the morning walking over there with their cow, and they'd put the stake in, and the cow would eat all the way around, and they didn't have to mow the grass.
There was a lot over there. It was across from the paper mill and a little bit
Yeah,
south.
that's the one I
And,
remember.
An older lady, was Mrs. Jake Posh. They were kind of well-to-do people, and she would chain her cow down there every day to mow the grass down. And she'd walk them home, keep them in the backyard or a little shed, and nobody cared. I don't know, it's just one of those things. And
Paul Mitchell lived across the street from that vacant lot.
And my grandpa, well, we lived on 3rd. Grandpa lived on 5th, straight behind us. This would be southwest. He had chickens, ducks, and everything. And they had their own eggs, their own chickens, and nobody semed to bother.
Never
And
mind.
none of the neighbors, people lived next door.
No, the
You'd probably
Wilsons,
give a
right
chicken.
next to us, they had chickens all the time.
And it was just a thing.
First house I owned here in Little Falls was in 11th Street Southwest. Tullers were my neighbor, Clarence's
sure.
brother. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of his first name. His wife was Bee. What was Clarence Tuller's brother? I can't, it slips my mind right now. But he had told me when they owned that house, everything to the south of it was a pasture. And there was actually a pig pen where my house was. And he said, "You have great soil there." Well, I found out the first summer I was there, people would show up in the middle of the night with flashlights looking for night crawlers.
It was Lyle.
Lyle, thank you,
yeah,
Lyle
Lyle
and B.
Dollar.
Okay.
And Lyle says, "You have great black soil there because of the pig pen."
Yeah, yeah.
And it was great for night crawlers. I mean, the yard was just full of them. People knew
Yeah.
about it. They'd be over there pulling the night crawlers out. But there were other pigs in town too, wasn't there?
Oh,
You
yes,
remember that?
Well, the one, Mrs. Karnowski lived a block and a half from us down 3rd Street.
That was the
towards
end of 3rd Street.
Lindbergh Drive.
Okay.
And talk about seasonal things. When the acorns would come down, we would fill a little wagon full of acorns and then take them to her place. She'd feed them to the pigs.
Oh, yeah.
Our motivation wasn't kindness towards the pigs or her, but she had this plum tree that the plums were purple and they were about that size. But she was such a nice lady, we wouldn't steal from her. So it was just an annual event. We'd go over there with that trailer of acorns. And she said, "Oh, boys, you're so nice. Help yourself to the plums."
That was one thing. Just about every other house had plum trees or apple trees in the backyard.
Oh, yeah.
Now you don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
If you ever wanted a chicken, all you had to do was take a gunny sack and then take a stick about that long that was round and then open the thing and put it over there and push on the chicken and he'd hop right on that stick. You pull the stick out and in the bag it went.
Are you speaking from experience?
Oh, no, I'd never answer any question unless my lawyer was with me.
But you know, youngsters are the same no matter what generation it is. I know you guys have talked about stealing watermelon
Oh, yeah.
from people's yards. Any particular stories that stick out?
I
Which
will
one
have
do
to
we
tell
want to
that
tell?
one. That was the one that was on.
A guy that lived on Lindbergh Drive, and his son was in the police force, and he raised watermelons and cabbage. I didn't like the Minnesota watermelon, but I liked cabbage. So when we'd make our raid, guys would take watermelons, and I would take a cabbage. So, but the old man would sit out there, and he was a pretty feisty guy. And one time, some older guys went in. One, we won't mention his name, but he was older than we were, right?
Yes, yeah. He's about a couple years older.
Anyway,
than
the old
me.
man was out there, and they got too brazen, and he had his shotgun out there, and he just took a shot. And he got this guy in the back, and the rest of the night, of course, he'd have gone home, and his dad would have killed him for stealing, because his dad was as honest as most Polish people were of that generation.
Oh, yeah.
No, Dad was like that too.
You bet.
What do you mean you stole that? You're out of here. Anyway, his buddies were picking the pellets out of his back.
No, we took him to the hospital.
Oh,
I
he did end up?
I remember.
Well, I was too
Well,
young. I
he
just
was
heard the
too
story.
bad. He was too bad to just let go.
He was. Huh?
And we took him to the hospital, and I went to visit him, and they were still picking out BBs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the last person stole one of those
Yeah, that was-
watermelons from this person.
We got the message.
Because the word got around.
So were there guys in town that you just didn't mess around with? I mean, you were talking, this guy was sitting out there with a shotgun.
Oh, yes.
There were other people like that?
I don't
like
think
Bud said, there were so many, everybody had some kind of orchard in back, and the only ones that we would really raid would be somebody that was really hard-nosed and we didn't like him.
Sure.
Like Mrs. Karnowski, no way would we go over there.
Right.
If we caught somebody stealing, we'd beat the crap out of them, you know? But that was sort of an unwritten law, wasn't it, Bud?
Right.
Yeah.
I think everybody had a shotgun in their kitchen.
I think so.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the west side, Les, that was a tough place to be? It was on the east side too?
Well, I don't know. I never knew anybody that took a shot at anybody on the east side, but
I think that was the only incident that I ever heard of.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of cooled down after that.
Oh, yeah.
We're a little careful.
We haven't talked very much in the longest time we've been doing this about Charles Lindbergh. And of course, Engstrom's Hardware on the west side.
Yeah.
Where was the hardware store?
Well, between the West Side Bar and the building that's got the murals on is an empty spot right now. And that was Martin Engstrom's hardware store on half of it, and the other half was a confectionery store. They had soda fountain, candy, and all different things. And
Pretty fancy place.
Yeah. His wife ran the confectionery store.
before I get that far, I remember I was probably about 2.5 years old, and my dad was building a house on 3rd Street. And he was up on the roof shingling with a man by the name of John Hammernick. And he had built most of the houses on the west side. And all of a sudden, this plane comes over, and my dad and John took their hats off and started waving. And this plane did a dip like this, and here it was Charlie Lindbergh coming back from his trip over the transatlantic. Because we lived only, what, about a mile from his
about
home.
a mile, yeah.
But
But he was
anyway,
coming in because there was this whole week celebration set up for him.
Oh,
And that
yes.
was- You saw him when he was just coming to town, and I
and he was
imagine
coming
he
back
had a
in his plane.
reception.
He
on
had a landing field out there. But anyway, getting back to Charlie, Charlie was his best friend. And he took care of, while the park wasn't under supervision, he took care of most of that. But Charlie knew Lindbergh very, very well.
You
Well,
mean
what-
Martin?
Martin knew
Martin,
Charlie very,
right.
very well.
Well,
it-
Technically, Martin Engstrom was a friend of Charles' dad. They were more the same age. But
Oh, yeah.
when his dad was in Washington all the time, he was sort of a surrogate father. Now, he'd ride his bicycle, or and he had a motorcycle at different times. He would, to go to school. He went to school across the street from my house at what was that?
Antlers?
Washington
Oh,
School.
Lincoln?
No, Washington.
Oh,
On the
Washington, across
from my
from
house,
you.
yeah,
From
4th
your
Street.
place.
That
Yeah,
was
Washington.
all grades, I guess, up to senior.
Oh, yeah.
So he went, but he would leave early enough, come in the back door of Martin Engstrom's hardware store, and he'd leave his lunch there, and he'd putz around till he had to go to school, and then he'd come back at noon, and he'd putz around there and eat his lunch. And they just had this friendship forever. And when Martin ended up in our nursing home, and Charles Lindbergh, Martin wanted an end room where you had a door to the outside that was not our main entrance. I never even gave it a thought. Yeah, I'll accommodate you. Martin was a very frugal man. He was in the hospital and he was dying of cancer. And I said, geez, I don't have room for you right now. And he said, it's all right. He says, my insurance has run out here at the hospital, but I will stay here till you have a place for me. Now, for Martin to say that, I mean, as frugal as he was. And so we got him in there, and about 3 times come up to the office. Well, you never believe who just visited me. Not Charles Lindbergh. Yeah, come on, I want to meet him. He said, yeah, one of these times. And actually, I did meet him the last time he was there, but where was I going with this? Martin.
Well,
I got ahead of myself on
well,
that.
at one point you told me Martin would be bragging to the other
Residents?
residents that he knew Charlie Lindbergh, and they always poked fun at him.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I read part of it in your little book the other day, just to get on some of the facts.
The last time, I'm in the dining room, and he comes walking up with Charles Lindbergh, and I looked over that way, and I looked back, and oh my God, that is Charles Lindbergh. I mean, you couldn't miss it. And he got as far as the front desk, and I said that I'd done these audio interviews with Martin, and I didn't know if he wanted to check them out to make sure he hadn't said it. He said, anything Martin ever says about me, he said, that's fine. That's about all I got to say. Crowd just people came in from all over. And he stood head and shoulders over everybody, because most everybody at that age were good. And he'd say, you, Johnson, are you related to so-and-so and so-and-so? I went to school, and he had these people just marveling at him, you know? And one guy walks through. He was kind of a pushy character, and he goes up and starts shaking hands, and I'm standing next to Charles Lindbergh. He looks at me, and that's not Charlie. No, I know Charlie, that's not Charlie. And he just, that handshake went on for about 3 minutes, and Charles Lindbergh, he was just laughing his guts out. It was the funniest scene. But yeah, Martin was, well, you worked for Martin.
Yep.
And of course, when you were gone during the war, he hired about 5 or 6 of us little runts from the west side. We'd work one Saturday a month, and another guy would work the next Saturday. So he kept us all on his payroll, and you'd get paid once a month for one day's work. He was just a fun guy. But in the interview, my favorite story is, he said, Charlie came in one day, and he said, he was all excited. He said, come on, Martin, we got to go. Where are we going? Going to the depot. He had bought the first tractor, motorized tractor in Morrison County. They took it off the train and took it out to his place. And he said, I didn't say anything. I saw him about a week later, and he said, came in, he said, Martin, I can't stand it. Martin never even, he just got the tarp. He said, tools. He said, we're going to take that apart, aren't we? You have to know how it runs. He said, exactly. He said, we took that thing apart. Every part was laid out so they could figure out what did what, and then they put it back together again.
Yeah.
And there's a picture of that tractor in the museum there.
The tractor was a LaCrosse. That was the brand name, was LaCrosse.
That I couldn't tell
remember
you,
that.
but
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm thinking tractor. When I saw that picture with the steel wheels and the spikes on it, I mean, that was,
very primitive tractor.
very primitive, yeah.
Yeah.
But their relationship was such that he said, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and that's when he now lived on because he lived above the store for a while, and then
Yeah,
I
for
think
quite
when
a
the
while.
Buck fire scared him out, and he wanted to get out of there, so he bought a house on Lindbergh Drive North, which is very appropriate. And he said, knock on the door at 10 o'clock at night. There would be Charlie, and we'd sit and talk and this and that. I said, did he sleep with you? Sleep at your place? And no, he said, he'd get in that Volkswagen and he'd go back to the place and he'd sleep in that Volkswagen. I mean, he was a tall man.
Yeah.
6'3".
Yeah,
Yeah.
how he could sleep in that little Volkswagen was beyond me. And I said, well, your friendship was, did you exchange Christmas gifts? And no, he was as frugal as Martin. But they had this weird relationship. But when Charles turned his home over to the state, Martin was the go-between. And if you go to Lindbergh School, there's copies of the correspondence between Charles Lindbergh and Martin Ingstrom, telling you how what to do next. Go to the state and do this and do that. Anyway, Martin was a very interesting man.
You know, my generation is so used to hearing it Charles Lindbergh,
Yeah.
and it's great for you guys to be saying Charlie Lindbergh. Is
Yeah.
that how he was known? Was
That
Charlie?
was-
Well, to all his friends, yes,
Yeah?
he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody referred to him in that older generation as Charlie.
Charlie.
And maybe it's because his dad's name was Charles.
Yeah.
It was.
And yeah,
That's true.
and his dad being a congressman in Washington, that's a prestigious job. Where Charlie was a blue collar, he flew over the ocean. So everybody, Charlie, you didn't nickname the guys that were in fancy positions. And Charlie was just that kind of guy.
But getting back to Martin Engstrom, he was a very, very talented person. When the war started in 1941, we used to go in the store a lot, and I knew him and his wife very well. And he said, "You want to work for me?" And I said, "Great." We had 2 hours of study period, and I got credit by taking an hour off. We used to close the school leave the school at 4, and I could get out at 3 and go work for him from 3 to 6, 35 cents an hour, which wasn't too bad in 1944. Well, I learned more from him in the 2 years I worked for him than I did in 12 years of high school. He taught me everything. Plumbing was number one. Well, all my life I was in the dry cleaning business, and the type of plumbing that we did in the dry cleaning business was the same with the old threaded pipe that he taught me how to do. Cut pipe, thread pipe, measurement, all the things of steel. And I don't do much with copper, but I could do all it. And I moved the whole dry cleaning shop by myself with help of lifting from things that he had taught me. And we also had he had the hardware store, and he showed me how to mark. This cost, alphabet would show how much the price cost. And he said, then you mark it up 15% or 20%. And I learned how to do that all through him. Learn how to wait on trade, and that helped me my whole lifetime. And I really admired him.
He taught me how to tread pipe too.
Yeah, he was
We didn't
very,
get to
very
work
great.
with the trade,
Yeah,
but
very great person.
yeah, I liked him.
Sound like a very talented person. I would imagine that's probably why Lindbergh enjoyed
Yeah.
Yes.
him so
And
much.
he was very intelligent, and like I say, they took that tractor apart.
Yes.
To two guys, it was just unreal.
Les, do you ever have a chance to meet Lindbergh?
Only one time where I lived on First Street, then there was a neighbor, and then Einar Johnson lived the next house to the north. And see, over where Lindbergh's house is, just to the north, there was a Johnson place. And there was Einar and Swede, his brother, and then Peta. And they had Einar would tell me they had a great big sandbox. And Lindbergh would come over there to play with those kids because they were about the same age. And then Einar used to tell me that Swede would throw sand in Lindbergh's face and then he'd run home. But every time he came to Little Falls, he always came over to visit Einar. He was a special friend. Because I think
yeah.
Swede was dead by that time, and I don't know where Peta moved to.
I think he was out in California.
Yeah.
He'd come back and visit his
And
sister.
so I saw this guy standing over there, so I walked over there, and here it was Lindbergh. So that was the only time I got to meet him. It was very interesting. He's a very tall, straight fella, you know. Yeah, that was kind of the highlight. And then one time he was over to the house. I don't remember what that was for. And then I took my son over there, and then he gave some speech, and then people walked up, but we never went up there. But yeah, that was kind of a highlight to be able to shake hands with him. But when Lee Berger, the Little Falls group, went over to France, this lady that worked at City Hall, she said to the students over there, she said, do you know what Lindbergh's famous for? And the kid says, oh yeah, he's the first one that flew over the English Channel. Well, that's what she told him. Yeah, all by himself.
You know, it's always great getting together with you guys, talking about the things that happened here in Little Falls and things that would have been forgotten about. And I think in a lot of cases, as you sit here, you did forget about them, and all of a sudden we're talking about them and sharing the stories.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It is. It really is. And you know, for a change, you two pretty much agreed at all the stories this time as brothers.
So far.
Yeah. This is why I put less between the two of them,
Yeah.
so an argument
Right.
would
I don't
something
know.
like that.
And Bodie's hunting, so that's
Yeah.
why he's not here today.
Yeah, so the next time we'll get Bodie back in here. And
Next time I'll bring my lawyer with me.
so you can
Name names, huh? I think we stayed out of trouble. I could have named a few names there.
Yeah, we just talked to Bodie. He was out west hunting mule deer, and he got a trophy, the one he was looking for a long, long time. And,
He's been out there 3-4 times,
yeah.
and this time he said 5 minutes into the hunt
Yep,
he.
and he got his trophy.
So I suppose we'll have to listen to that story next time.
I think so.
Only he won't talk about things unless you prod him.
We'll
Yeah.
prod him.
Yeah.
We'll prod
Oh,
him.
he's a very modest fellow.
He is.
Well, guys, Hub, Les, Bud, thanks for joining us again today. And
Well, thank you.
We'll do this again,
Soon.
and soon we will. We will. Thank you very much. I'm Gary Block with the Little Falls Scene. Thanks for joining us.